Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Green Hack. Let me ask you a question. When is your garden at its most beautiful? For many gardeners across America, the answer comes almost instantly. It is that magical period in spring when everything seems to come alive at once. Tulips burst into color. Flower beds finally fill out. Fresh green lawns replace the dull colors of winter. The entire landscape suddenly looks exactly the way you imagined it months earlier, while flipping through gardening magazines or browsing garden centers. It is the moment many homeowners spend the entire year working toward. But what if a gardener in Japan answered that question very differently? What if the most beautiful moment in a garden was not supposed to be a single moment at all? What if the goal was never to create one perfect season? What if the goal was to create a garden that remained interesting throughout the entire year? That single difference changes almost everything. It changes what people plant. It changes how they design their landscapes. It changes what they notice when they walk through a garden. And perhaps most surprisingly, it changes what they consider beautiful. Many American gardens are built around a peak. There is often a season when everything comes together. The flowers are blooming, the weather is pleasant, the colors are at their brightest, the garden reaches its highest point. Nothing about this is wrong. In fact, some of the most beautiful residential gardens in America achieve exactly that goal. They create a spectacular moment that captures attention immediately. Many Japanese gardens follow a different philosophy. Instead of building toward one dramatic peak, they are designed as a journey through time. Spring matters, summer matters, autumn matters, winter matters. The garden is expected to change. In some cases, the changes are more important than the highlights themselves. At first, this may seem like a small distinction, but once you notice it, you begin seeing it everywhere. Imagine two gardeners standing in front of their gardens during the first warm weeks of spring. The American gardener looks at the flower beds and feels excitement. Months of planning have finally paid off. Color is returning. Everything feels fresh and full of possibility. The Japanese gardener feels excitement too. But the focus is often slightly different. Instead of seeing the beginning of a peak season, he may be seeing the beginning of a new chapter. The flowers are important, but they are only one part of a larger story that will continue unfolding throughout the year. This difference becomes especially visible when we look at spring itself. For many Americans, spring feels like the main event. Garden centers are crowded, new plants are purchased, flower beds are redesigned. Entire weekends are devoted to preparing the landscape for the growing season. The reward is obvious. Spring gardens can be spectacular. Visitors stop to admire them. Neighbors compliment them. Photographs are taken. Social media fills with colorful displays. Yet there is an interesting phrase many gardeners use. You should have seen it last month. Or perhaps, it looked incredible a few weeks ago. Without realizing it, they are describing beauty as something temporary, something that has already passed. Now compare that with many traditional Japanese gardens. Spring is certainly celebrated in Japan. The famous cherry blossoms attract millions of visitors every year. Entire cities gather beneath flowering trees. Photographs are taken. Families spend time outdoors. The blossoms are admired everywhere. Yet there is an important difference in how they are appreciated. Everyone knows they will disappear. The blossoms are not beautiful despite being temporary. They are beautiful partly because they are temporary. That idea changes everything. Imagine spending months waiting for flowers to bloom, only to celebrate them precisely because they will soon be gone. For many Western gardeners, that feels counterintuitive. We naturally want beautiful things to last longer. We want the peak to continue. We want the flowers to remain. Japanese garden culture often takes a different approach. Instead of resisting change, it embraces it. The blossoms fall, the season changes, the garden moves forward. And that movement becomes part of the beauty. This creates a fascinating contrast between two different ways of experiencing a landscape. One approach often asks, how can I make this moment last longer? The other often asks, what comes next? Neither approach is wrong. Both create beautiful gardens, but they encourage people to pay attention to different things. Many American gardens invite admiration through color. Japanese gardens often invite observation through change. One captures attention immediately, the other rewards attention over time. And that distinction becomes even more interesting once spring begins to fade. Because here is a question that most gardeners rarely ask. What happens after the flowers are gone? For some landscapes, that question creates a problem. The feature that attracted the most attention is disappearing. The brilliant display that defined the season is slowly fading. The garden begins losing the very thing it was designed to showcase. But in many Japanese gardens, the end of spring is not treated as a loss. It is treated as a transition. As the blossoms fall, fresh green leaves begin appearing. New textures emerge. Different shades of green start replacing the bright colors of spring. The focus shifts from flowers to atmosphere. The garden begins telling a different story. And that story becomes even more surprising once summer arrives. Because summer reveals something many gardeners never think about. A garden does not only need to look beautiful, a garden also needs to feel beautiful. Summer is where the differences between these two approaches become impossible to ignore. During spring, both American and Japanese gardens can look beautiful. Flowers are blooming, temperatures are comfortable, and everything feels full of energy. But summer has a way of exposing what a garden was truly designed to do. In many American neighborhoods, the flowers that created so much excitement in spring now face their greatest challenge. Long days of intense sunlight, periods of drought, and rising temperatures place increasing pressure on the landscape. Gardeners work hard to keep everything looking as vibrant as possible. More watering, more maintenance, more attention. The goal often remains the same: preserve the beauty that spring created, keep the colors alive for as long as possible. Yet summer constantly reminds us that nature rarely stays at its peak forever. This is where many Japanese gardens begin, following a different path. Instead of asking how to make summer look more like spring, they ask an entirely different question. How can the garden become enjoyable during summer itself? At first glance, that sounds like a small difference. In reality, it changes almost every design decision. Suddenly, shade becomes more valuable than flowers. A cool resting place becomes more important than another burst of color. The sound of moving water becomes just as meaningful as a visual display. The focus shifts from appearance to experience. One reason this contrast feels so striking is that many American gardens are designed to impress visitors quickly. A person can step outside, look across the landscape, and immediately understand what makes it beautiful. Bright flower beds draw attention. Color combinations stand out. The visual impact is obvious. Many Japanese gardens reveal themselves differently. Instead of demanding attention, they reward attention. The longer a visitor stays, the more details begin to emerge. Sunlight filters through layers of leaves. Reflections move across the surface of a pond. A gentle breeze changes the appearance of shadows throughout the day. The garden becomes something to experience rather than simply something to observe. Imagine visiting two gardens on a hot afternoon in July. In the first garden, the flowers remain the center of attention. The homeowner is understandably proud of the display. The colors are vibrant and eye-catching. Yet, after a few minutes, there may not be much else to discover. In the second garden, the visual impact may appear quieter at first. There are fewer dramatic blooms competing for attention. Yet the longer you remain there, the more comfortable the space feels. The shade becomes noticeable. The sound of water becomes soothing. The movement of leaves in the breeze creates a sense of calm. The garden begins affecting your mood rather than simply attracting your eyes. This may explain why so many visitors describe traditional Japanese gardens as peaceful. Interestingly, peace is not something you can plant. You cannot buy it at a garden center. You cannot spread it across a flower bed. It emerges from countless design choices working together. The arrangement of trees, the placement of water, the use of open space, and the balance between sunlight and shade all contribute to an atmosphere that feels different from a landscape designed primarily around seasonal color. Neither approach is superior. They simply prioritize different experiences. One emphasizes visual excitement. The other emphasizes long-term enjoyment. And then autumn arrives, and the contrast becomes even more fascinating. For many American gardeners, autumn marks the gradual conclusion of the gardening year. The flowers that dominated spring and summer begin fading. Growth slows. The season feels like a transition toward rest. There is often a sense that the best moments are already behind us. The garden delivered its performance, and now the curtain is beginning to close. Yet in many Japanese gardens, autumn is treated as one of the most important seasons of the entire year. In some cases, it is the season people anticipate most. Trees that seemed ordinary throughout summer suddenly transform into brilliant displays of red, orange, and gold. The landscape changes character almost overnight. What appeared calm and understated in August becomes unforgettable in October. This creates one of the most powerful visual comparisons in garden design. Many American gardens place their greatest emphasis on flowers. Many Japanese gardens place equal importance on leaves. Spring belongs to blossoms. Autumn belongs to foliage. Both seasons receive attention. Both seasons are expected to contribute beauty. As a result, the garden never depends entirely on a single moment of success. Imagine walking through two landscapes in late October. In one, most of the flowers have faded, and the season feels as though it is winding down. In the other, Japanese maples glow beneath the afternoon sunlight, while fallen leaves create patterns across stone pathways and around garden ponds. Visitors arrive specifically to witness this transformation. The season is not ending. The season is becoming the attraction. Perhaps the most interesting part of all is that autumn beauty in Japan is often appreciated because it represents change. The leaves are beautiful precisely because they will soon fall. Their temporary nature increases their value rather than diminishing it. This idea appears again and again throughout Japanese gardening. Instead of resisting change, the garden embraces it. Instead of trying to hold on to one perfect moment, it celebrates the continuous movement from one season to the next. And if autumn teaches us how to appreciate change, winter teaches something even more surprising. Because when the flowers are gone, when the colorful leaves have fallen, and when many gardeners assume there is nothing left to see, Japanese gardens reveal perhaps their most important lesson of all. Winter is where many gardens reveal what they were truly built for. In much of America, winter is often viewed as the off-season. The flowers are gone, the bright colors have disappeared, and many homeowners spend less time thinking about their landscapes. Gardening magazines begin talking about next spring. Seed catalogs arrive in the mail. Attention shifts toward what comes next rather than what exists now. There is a natural assumption that the garden has entered a period of waiting. The show is over, and everyone is waiting for the next performance to begin. Yet many Japanese gardeners see winter through a completely different lens. They understand that when the leaves disappear, something else becomes visible. Structure, balance, form. The branches hidden beneath summer foliage suddenly emerge. The shape of a tree becomes easier to appreciate. Stone pathways become more noticeable. The relationship between water, open space, and carefully positioned plants becomes clearer. What seems simple during summer often reveals surprising complexity during winter. This is one reason photographs of snow-covered Japanese gardens are admired around the world. The beauty is not coming from flowers. It is not coming from bright colors. It comes from composition. Every stone, every branch, every curve of the landscape becomes easier to see. Winter removes distractions. What remains is the foundation of the garden itself. This idea can feel surprising to people who are accustomed to judging gardens primarily by flowers. Imagine removing every blossom, every bright leaf, and every dramatic burst of seasonal color. Would anything beautiful remain? In many landscapes, that question is uncomfortable because so much visual interest depends on seasonal highlights. Winter exposes weaknesses just as clearly as it exposes strengths. Japanese gardeners have understood this for centuries. A tree is not valuable only when it is covered with leaves. A stone lantern is not meaningful only when flowers surround it. A pathway is not important only when colorful borders frame it. Every element must contribute something throughout the year. Winter becomes a kind of test. If the garden still feels balanced in January, then the design is working. If visitors can still find beauty when almost everything colorful has disappeared, then the garden possesses a deeper kind of appeal. This may be one reason winter gardens leave such a strong impression on people. There is a sense of honesty about them. Nothing is hidden. Nothing relies on seasonal spectacle. The bones of the garden are fully exposed. The structure speaks for itself. And perhaps there is a lesson here that reaches far beyond gardening. Most things in life are easy to appreciate during their peak moments. Success is easy to admire. Growth is easy to celebrate. Beauty is easy to notice when everything is flourishing. The more difficult skill is learning to appreciate quieter seasons. Winter gardens remind us that value does not disappear simply because attention does. Sometimes the most important qualities become visible only after everything else has fallen away. That observation brings us to the biggest question in this entire video. What exactly makes a garden beautiful? Many American gardeners might answer with flowers, color, abundance, and visual impact. There is nothing wrong with that answer. Some of the most breathtaking gardens in America are famous precisely because they create unforgettable moments. A visitor arrives, sees the landscape, and immediately understands why it is special. Beauty can be dramatic. Beauty can be spectacular. Beauty can leave a lasting impression in a matter of seconds. Many Japanese gardeners might answer that same question differently. They may talk about atmosphere, balance, seasonal change, the relationship between different elements over time. Instead of asking whether the garden looks perfect today, they may ask whether it remains interesting throughout the year. Instead of focusing on a single photograph, they focus on the entire experience. Instead of celebrating one moment, they celebrate a sequence of moments. This is where the contrast between these two philosophies becomes most meaningful. Americans often celebrate the peak. Japanese gardens often celebrate the journey. One approach highlights the moment when everything comes together. The other highlights the process of continuous transformation. One says, "Look how beautiful it is right now." The other says, "Come back next month and see what has changed." One captures attention immediately. The other keeps rewarding attention over time. The fascinating thing is that both approaches contain wisdom. There is value in creating moments worth remembering. There is also value in appreciating the quieter stages that happen in between. The mistake is assuming that beauty exists only at the peak. Nature rarely works that way. The most interesting landscapes are often those that continue revealing new details long after the first impression has faded. A garden that only looks beautiful during one season may create excitement. A garden that remains interesting through 4 seasons creates a relationship. Perhaps that is why so many people become more interested in Japanese gardens as they grow older. When we are young, we often focus on milestones. We chase dramatic achievements. We measure success through highlights. Over time, many people begin noticing something different. They begin appreciating the smaller moments, the transitions, the gradual changes that happen quietly and almost unnoticed. The journey itself becomes more meaningful than the destination. A garden reflects that shift beautifully. Spring reminds us that beginnings matter. Summer reminds us that comfort matters. Autumn reminds us that change can be beautiful. Winter reminds us that even apparent endings contain their own form of beauty. Suddenly, the garden becomes more than a collection of plants. It becomes a way of observing time itself. The changing seasons stop being obstacles to overcome and become experiences to appreciate. And perhaps that is the most valuable lesson hidden within this comparison. The real difference between these gardens may have very little to do with flowers, trees, or landscaping techniques. The real difference may be the relationship each culture has with time. One often seeks the perfect moment. The other often seeks meaning throughout the entire journey. One asks how to extend the peak. The other asks how to appreciate every stage. Of course, no homeowner needs to choose one philosophy over the other. In fact, the most interesting gardens often borrow from both. A spectacular spring display can coexist with beautiful autumn color. A peaceful summer retreat can exist alongside dramatic seasonal moments. The goal is not to copy another culture. The goal is to discover possibilities that we may not have considered before. The next time you walk through your garden, try asking a different question. Instead of asking whether it looks perfect today, ask what happens next. Ask what visitors will notice in summer after spring flowers fade. Ask what beauty remains in autumn when the season begins changing. Ask whether winter reveals anything worth appreciating. The answers may completely change the way you think about your landscape. Perhaps the most beautiful garden is not the one that reaches the highest peak. Perhaps it is the one that continues giving you reasons to look closer throughout the year. Perhaps beauty is not a single moment at all. Perhaps beauty is the journey from season to season. Thank you for spending time with us here at The Green Hack. If this comparison changed the way you think about gardens, let us know in the comments. Do you prefer the dramatic beauty of peak bloom? Or do you enjoy a garden that changes character throughout the year? We would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And next week, we will explore another fascinating difference between American and Japanese approaches to home and garden design. Until then, take a look outside. Your garden may already be telling a story you never noticed before.